continue a little bit later on in the evening. So welcome everybody. My name is Laura Gonzalez. I had the privilege of being the teacher for this cohort of the New American Speakers program. I want to welcome you all to our second storytelling night, our final storytelling night. The students who you will hear from today have gone through an intensive 10-week public speaking course. I cannot say enough how proud I am of all the students and how far they've come since the beginning of the class. I do have to say this is such a difficult time for refugee and immigrant communities who are just consistently under attack by various entities. And just through all of that, our students have found the strength in community to continue sharing their stories, to push forward, to raise their voice even louder for the rights that they are entitled to and their communities are entitled to. And truly, that's what Weave Tales is all about. Weave Tales is an organization that aims to break negative perceptions and existing narratives surrounding refugees by sharing the real stories of refugees told by themselves in their own voices, in their own perspective, and sharing that with the world. And so as we continue to grapple with how do we incorporate diversity, equity, and belonging into our organizations? What do we do to advocate for our communities? Weave Tales is an organization that has made a home for so many refugee and immigrant stories and a platform for us to share the stories, listen to each other, grow with each other, and continue doing the work that sustains everybody in the world. So I'm so grateful to be a part of this. I want to give a special shout out to the Refugee Storytellers Collective for their support and partnership of this cohort. The New American Speakers program is an annual program, although this year we're having 2 cohorts because of the increased demand for this type of platform. It's a program that's designed to help newcomers and multilingual speakers share their experiences of migration with the general public. So we're finishing up our 4th cohort, and actually we're kicking off our 5th cohort very soon. So at the end of the night today, I will share the link to the application for the 5th cohort of the New American Speakers program. So we have a fun-filled evening today. We have a guest speaker, an amazing guest speaker who I'm very excited to introduce to you all, who will kick off the storytelling night, and then we will hear from several of our students. So thank you all so much for being here. With that being said, I am so honored to introduce to you our guest speaker for today, Vuong Sandoval. And so I'm going to spotlight her really quick so that you can all see. One second. There we go. I wanted to spotlight you while I introduced you, Na. So Vuong Sandoval and her family fled their homeland due to the Vietnam War, became refugees known as boat people, and were displaced in refugee camps before resettling in the US. She currently serves as a US Refugee Advisory Board project manager at Refugee Congress and the Immigration DEI advisor at 3i Law Firm. She previously served at the Colorado Department of Law, the State Homeland Security Office, specializing in counterintelligence and counterterrorism, and as an adjunct professor at 2 different universities. She's a human rights advocate and public speaker through her lived and professional expertise, storytelling, education, and policy. Na is a TEDx presenter and a Medium.com writer. She serves in various capacities and advocacy roles, including being a Refugee Congress honorary delegate for Colorado, the vice chair for program services with Lutheran Family Services Rocky Board of Directors. She's a founding member and public speaker at Colorado Refugee Speakers Bureau, a member of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, a Noble Ambassador for Christina Noble Children's Foundation, and chair for Lunar New Year Allies Advisory Group that led and successfully passed HB 23-1271 Lunar Year, an observed state holiday for Colorado. She was telling us today about all her local activism in Colorado, and it's just so impressive. NASP Human Rights Advocacy was recognized by UNHCR for AAPI Heritage Month in a Spotlight Story Badge of Honor. She met First Lady Dr. Jill Biden and advocated to raise the presidential determination. She was honored with a mural by artist IMD Tour, recognized as 5 Inspiring Refugee Women for International Women's Day by USA for UNHCR. She also received the Colorado Attorney General's Award for Outstanding Community Service. She was a refugee representative from the US at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees at United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Annual Tripartite Consultation for Resettlement in Geneva, Switzerland, received the 2021 Refugee Congress Excellence Award, was honored with a mural, recognized as 5 Inspiring Refugee Women, and received an award from the Attorney General's Office for Outstanding Community Service. So she has done so much in the community. She has continued to advocate for her community and for others. And I am so excited to introduce her to you all tonight.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you to Weave Tales, New American Speakers Program. Thank you to the very famous BASMA for all of your work. And Laura, thank you so much for that introduction. And to all of you tonight for joining us. As Laura had mentioned, I'm a Vietnamese refugee, and this topic and this issue could not be closer to my heart. So with that, I'll share some of my thoughts with you. Don't tell your story. Don't tell anyone your story. You shouldn't share personal stories to strangers. To have nothing when we arrived is shameful. People will judge you. They will look down on you. No good can come from you sharing your story. Do you really want people to know so many personal things about you? That's what I heard as a child. That's what I heard growing up as a child refugee, all the way into adulthood in the United States. I believed what I was told. So what did I do? I kept my story and my family story to myself. As with many refugee children, I was very discouraged from sharing my story. In fact, none of my teachers or my childhood peers even knew that I was a refugee, because that didn't happen until much later into my life. To be honest, as with most children, I didn't want to stand out. I wanted to blend in. I wanted to fit in with other kids. And anything different or, too weird was going to have repercussions. I was going to be teased by other kids and even by some adults. So for most of my life, I didn't share my story. I didn't think it was something to be shared. I wasn't comfortable with sharing it because of every single thing that I was told. Being different felt like something very shameful. Being different meant not being accepted. Being different wasn't welcomed. Being different meant that I was going to be left out. But what I truly believe is that my story wasn't much different than many other refugee stories. That's why it takes us years to finally share our stories. We've been told to think that it makes us less to tell our stories. We've been programmed to hide who we are. We've been discouraged from showing who we truly are. When I finally shared my refugee story, it was an emotional experience. It was when I finally heard myself speak truth about my own journey, the loss that my family and I had endured, the challenges and hardships that my parents experienced, and all of the weight that they had to carry around. and all that we endured and all that we sensed from all of our loss. It's the same loss that many of you here have experienced. It was an unforgettable moment for me, an extremely emotional one. Since that time, I've shared my refugee story on World Refugee Day at the state capitol in Denver. I've shared my story at the Women's March on Denver, where over 10,000 people gathered in our downtown space to celebrate women from diverse backgrounds. I told my refugee story to United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in the spotlight story that Laura had mentioned, called Badge of Honor, because I don't feel like it should be a badge of shame to be a refugee. It should be a badge of honor. I shared my story as a TEDx speaker for my talk called Assimilation is Colonization. And I even shared my story to First Lady Dr. Jill Biden in front of Air Force Two, which I didn't even know existed. I just thought there was Air Force One, did not know it even existed. I asked her to share my message to the president that we need to raise the presidential determination, or the PD, back to its numbers. And about a month later, the PD was raised from 62,500 back to 125,000 that the US has welcomed since the Refugee Act of 1980. Over the years of being a human rights advocate, I learned valuable lessons from finally sharing my refugee story. And I want to share some of that with you tonight. Sharing our stories is extremely empowering for the storyteller, for you, because it helps us connect across differences and things that people do not feel like we have in common. It keeps us together and united with a common thread. It helps us to see our common humanity and moves us and the communities so that we are not being tokenized. It's also important that we as storytellers control our narrative so that we are not looked at in a certain light, that we are actually directing how we want these stories to be told. Storytelling not only changes hearts, but I have seen it firsthand, it changes policy. Policy that impacts the lives of refugees and other forcibly displaced people. It's an act of justice for those who have been wronged or silenced. But most importantly, for our community, it contributes towards healing. So I want to close with letting you know that not only am I an advocate, not only am I a human rights advocate, but I'm also a strong advocate for storytelling, because stories have impact. Impact is why our stories are so powerful. I hope that you will always recognize the power of your voice, your stories, and the impact it has on everyone who is lucky enough to hear it. I want to congratulate all of you in Cohort 4. I'm so excited to hear your journey and your experiences this evening, and I want to thank you.
Thank you so much, Na. That was such an inspiring story, and you pointing us to the importance of sharing our stories. We have Q&A at the end, but I do want to break the rules a little and ask you just one question, because I've gone through this whole cohort with our students, and one of the issues that has come up a lot, which makes complete sense, is how do you get the courage or the motivation to share your story and continue sharing your story when thinking about the story brings up so much trauma and pain from, you know, the things that you continue to experience? Like, where do you go when you just feel so defeated and you feel the trauma and the pain and you're reliving that, and then you have to like share it with people who don't understand? So how do you kind of work through that? That's something that we've talked about in the class, and I'd love for you to speak on it just briefly if you can.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. It's okay to break the rules when it has to do with trying to uplift our own community, right? And really supporting each other. So I really appreciate that question. My initial suggestion is, especially for newer speakers, do not put yourself in spaces if you're not emotionally ready. I don't want to see anyone re-traumatize themselves. I certainly don't want them um, to be in the space where not only are you not ready, perhaps the audience isn't even ready, you know, to because they might want to ask certain questions, and seeing that you aren't ready, I think might close off some of the conversations that leads to that healing as well. It takes a lot of practice. It takes it takes to have the courage to be able to expose these vulnerable sides of yourself too, but that takes a lot of time. So what I would suggest is talk to people who you already have rapport with, communities you're already familiar with, organizations that you are already working with in various spaces, because you see familiar faces and you're going to get the support regardless. And then eventually find your way through different spaces as well. And everyone is going to have their area, their strengths and their areas of expertise. So do not feel like you need to speak about every single issue regarding refugee related events or refugee related policy. No one is an expert on every single topic. Find the spaces you're most comfortable, and that's where you're going to shine the most.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think that you are just like bringing strength to a cohort of students who's really had to push through. And I know you're inspiring others as well. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'm sure
Thank
we'll
you.
have other questions for you. There's some nice comments in the chat, and I'm sure we'll have other questions. Thank you.